There are some truly messed up people in the world, guys, so make sure you stay safe. Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. I'm your host Emily, and today we're counting down our list of the top 10 evil people hiding in North America we pray we never meet. So if you're in North America, I suggest locking your doors before watching this video. Now let's get on with the list. Number 10. Tylenol poisoning. On September 29th, 1982, 7 people in the Chicago area ingested poisoned Tylenol pills, consequently collapsing and dying shortly after. Bottles of the popular pain and fever reliever were spiked with cyanide and returned to store shelves, targeting random people. After all the victims were buried on October 1st, 1982, it was revealed the Tylenol bottles were intentionally poisoned with potassium cyanide. Immediately, over 31 million bottles of Tylenol were recalled by the manufacturer and were issued warnings. They also offered to replace recalled bottles with new bottles and offered a $100,000 reward to anyone who may have any information on the perpetrator. Over $100 million, and there were several more copycat deaths across the United States after the initial incident had occurred. This led to the invention of safety seals that you see on medicine bottles today. To this day, no suspect has ever been charged or convicted of the poisonings. Number 9. Jailbreak at Alcatraz Penitentiary. The famous island prison, a little over a mile off the coast of San Francisco, shut down in 1963 due to cost concerns. Today is a part of the National Park Service. For 30 years, it held prisoners including gangsters Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly. Among its other famous inmates were brothers John and Clarence Algin and Frank Morris, who in 1962 executed an elaborate escape plan using 3 papier-mâché heads that made them appear to be sleeping as they crawled through ventilation ducts. One possible scenario is that the men drowned and their bodies were swept to sea, but the US Marshal Service has kept the case open in the unlikely event the trio is still alive, according to the FBI. So, did they really escape? No one knows except for them. Number 8. Robbery gone wrong. Sukju Roo immigrated from South Korea to Canada in 1972 and opened a new convenience store on the ground floor of a senior's home in the north end of Toronto. Sometime during the afternoon of February 18, 1993, Roo closed the store briefly to drive his wife home, as he often did. Shortly after he returned, 2 teen boys reportedly entered the store with a firearm. Roo's daughter and police suspect he refused when the teens demanded he hand over his cash. Whatever happened, one of them shot him in the chest and they fled. A few minutes later, a customer found Roo laying on the floor and called 911. The suspects were last seen boarding a westbound bus, but by the time police caught up to the vehicle, the teens were gone. Police canvassed the neighborhood, collected evidence from the store, and brought the bus in for forensic examination. But with no solid leads or security footage, and with DNA technology still in its infancy, they couldn't zero in on the killers. In 2021, nearly 30 years after Roo's death, Toronto police reopened the case in the hopes of extracting DNA and further evidence from what was collected on scene, hoping that advancements in testing technology might crack the case. Number 7. Wall Street of 1920. During the lunch rush on Wall Street on a September day in 1920, a man driving a cart pressed an old horse forward in front of the USSA office across from the JP Morgan building. He stopped his cart, got down, and immediately disappeared into the crowd. Minutes later, the cart exploded into a hail of metal fragments, resulting in the deaths of more than 30 people and injuring 300. The aftermath was horrific, and the death toll rose as the day wore on and more victims succumbed to their injuries. The NYPD was able to reconstruct the bomb and its fuse mechanism, but there was much debate about the nature of the explosive. However, the most promising lead had actually come prior to the explosion. A mailman had found a crudely spelled and printed flyers in the Wall Street area from a group calling itself the American Anarchist Fighters that demanded the release of political prisoners. The letters seemed similar to the ones used the previous year in 2 bombing campaigns which were led by Italian anarchists. The Bureau investigated up and down the East Coast to trace the printing of these flyers, but they were unsuccessful. In the end, the Members were not identified. Number 6. Death of Elisa Lam. On January 26, 2013, 21-year-old Canadian tourist Elisa Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. When she never checked out on February 1st, nor had any contact with her parents, the Los Angeles Police Department was contacted. On February 19th, 18 days from the last time she was seen, Elisa's body was found floating and naked in a water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel. Her body was found due to hotel guests complaining about the hotel's water pressure. One couple even reported that the water was coming out black and had a bad taste, which just like ew. According to the hotel's manager, when she first checked in, she was staying in a hostel-style room with other travelers, but was later moved to her own private room due to complaints from her roommates about odd behavior. The last time she was seen was on surveillance footage on the hotel's elevator. The footage showed Elisa acting strange, almost like she was hiding. She also moved her hands in strange ways and looked like she was talking to someone who was out of the security camera's view. After her body and the surveillance footage were found, it was suggested that she was on some sort of hallucinogenic drug. But even though she took 4 different medications for her bipolar disorder, toxicology studies reported that there were no traces of any drugs or alcohol that could have contributed to her death. To this day, no one knows how she was able to access the roof or climb into the water tank and shut the 20-pound lid by herself. Number 5. The Hall Mills Murders. In 1922, in New Brunswick, New Jersey, Minister Edward Wheeler Hall was having an extramarital affair with a member of his congregation, the also married Eleanor Mills. On September 14th, the two left their respective family homes to meet each other. When the minister didn't return home that night, his wife and one of his brother-in-laws began a search. Edward and Eleanor were found 2 days later when another couple walking Lover's Lane found their bodies. Edward had been shot once through the head, but Eleanor had been shot in the face 3 times and her throat had been slashed so deeply that she had nearly been decapitated. Later, an autopsy revealed that her tongue and larynx had been cut out. The case was clearly personal. Though their affair had apparently been common knowledge around the town, both of their spouses claimed to have been in the dark, which was found as highly suspicious. Then witness statements kept changing, attention seekers kept confessing to the deaths, and physical evidence was destroyed when sightseers trampled the crime scene looking for souvenirs. As a result, Edward and Eleanor's deaths were never solved. Number 4. Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That famous rhyme makes it seem as if there's never been any doubt as to whether Lizzie Borden ended the lives of her father and stepmother on August 4th, 1892. Officially though, the identity of the killer remains a mystery. Lizzie and a maid, Bridget Sullivan, were alone in the Borden house with Mr. and Mrs. Borden when Lizzie discovered her father dead. He had been repeatedly struck in the head with a blunt instrument. Upstairs, she found the body of her stepmother. Now initially, the evidence against Lizzie looked damning. She had recently attempted to purchase prussic acid, a poison, and was alleged to have burned a dress in the stove. And the maid Bridget, her suspected accomplice, was seen out the evening of August 4th carrying a parcel out of the house. But at Lizzie's trial in 1893, the court determined that all evidence was merely circumstantial. Lizzie wasn't convicted and no other suspects were ever arrested. Number 3. Dan Cooper. One of the most famous heists in history occurred on November 24th, 1971, when a man who identified himself as Dan Cooper bought a one-way ticket to Seattle on Northwest Orient Airlines from Portland, Oregon. After the plane was airborne, Dan handed the flight attendant a note. At first, she just put it in her pocket without looking, but then Cooper told her, "Miss, you better look at that note, I have a bomb." He opened a briefcase to reveal red color sticks surrounded by an array of wires. He told the flight attendant to write down everything he was saying and take it to the captain. The note said, "I want $200,000 by 5 p.m. in cash, exclusively in $20 bills, put it in a knapsack. I want 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. When we land, I want a fuel truck ready to refuel. No funny stuff or I'll do the job." FBI agents assembled the ransom money and Seattle police obtained the parachutes from a local skydiving school. When Dan claimed his demands were met, he allowed all the passengers and some of the crew to exit the airplane. He told the remaining crew to refuel the plane and chart a course for Mexico City while staying below 10,000 feet. Then, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, he jumped from the plane with the money, and he was never seen again. Despite an expansive manhunt and over 45 years of searching, no conclusions have been made as to the man's identity or his fate after he jumped. It is called one of the greatest cold cases in FBI and US history. Number 2. Death of the Black Dahlia. On January 15, 1947, 22-year-old Elizabeth Short was found dead in residential Los Angeles. Her body was so mutilated as the body was cut in half and so pale and drained of blood that the woman who discovered it thought she had stumbled upon a mannequin. The body was cut with surgical precision, leaving no trauma to internal organs and bones. Her face was also cut from mouth to ears, leaving an eerie permanent smile. There was no blood on the ground, making it believed that the body was moved after she had been killed. 9 days after she was discovered, an envelope was sent to the Examiner that read, "The Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." As promised, the envelope contained her social security card, birth certificate, photographs, names written on pieces of papers, and an address book. Then on March 14th, a note was found tucked in a shoe in a pile of men's clothing by the ocean's edge at the foot of Breeze Avenue in Venice. The note read, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." Although many suspects were named, no authorities were able to identify who ended the Black Dahlia's life. And coming in at number 1 is Bryon Carr death. On the evening of November 10th, 1988, Bryon Carr and some friends went bar hopping. As he was driving home alone in the early morning, he reportedly stopped next to a young man riding a bicycle in the road. The two spoke for a while and then Bryon drove off. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. When he failed to show up to a family function the next day, his relatives visited his house to find his door ajar and his lifeless body on the floor in his bedroom, strangled and stabbed. His wallet had been stolen, and on his wall someone had written in pen, "I will kill again." Based on the scene of the crime, police suspected that Bryon had been killed following a consensual same-sex encounter. Some believe the nature of the death hindered the case. Charlottetown's gay community accused the police of treating his death with indifference. For nearly 3 decades, the investigation went nowhere, but in 2018, an anonymous informant called the police from a payphone, suggesting they had a tip to deliver about Bryon's death. The source hung up before divulging into any info though, and the police later put out a call encouraging him to come forward again to share what he knows. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 evil people hiding in North America we pray we never meet. Which story scares you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and hey, why not give this video a big thumbs up if you like what we're doing. I'm your host Emily, and I'll see you next time. Peace.